talk. Quick 15-minute presentation. What is DarkFi and why are we building it? So how many people here have already heard of DarkFi? Okay, that's actually pretty good. How many of those people have a sense of what DarkFi is? Oh yeah, roughly the same people. So that's good, at least like, we're not super vague or something. So, what is DarkFi? DarkFi is a layer 1 blockchain that's been specifically built to accommodate what we call anonymous engineering. What is anonymous engineering? It is the new art and science of creating anonymous and privacy-preserving applications using whatever techniques are available to us. So DarkFi at the moment is primarily focused on ZK. So we've built a kind of general purpose smart contract machinery, which includes a ZK layer where you can write ZK proofs and then compose them into anonymous applications using a runtime based off of WASM. But the goal here, and I mentioned this notion of anonymous engineering, is to really diversify the toolkit so that it's not limited to ZK, but actually makes use of any number of techniques. So in the future, that might include multi-party computation, fully homomorphic encryption. So essentially what DarkFi wants to do is to provide developers with a featureful interface that they can use to basically compose these advanced anonymous applications. So DarkFi, at the moment, as well as trying to enable this new class of applications, anonymous applications, we've also made a few apps to demonstrate how to do this. That's because we're not simply trying to make something that's like highly generalizable and programmable that can support any app, although we are doing that. We also want to show what does this new design space of anonymous engineering actually look like, and what are some of the techniques that developers can use, where could this new design space take us in terms of novel applications. So we've built some apps to demonstrate these techniques, and already working on our testnet are anonymous transfers between any asset on DarkFi, so basically anonymous money. We have anonymous swaps between any asset pair. We have the world's first fully anonymous DAO. So what that is a on-chain encrypted treasury that can be operated on according to rules. And all of the activity of the DAO is anonymous, and all of the participants are anonymous, and the treasury is also completely anonymous. And the DAO is very interesting as a kind of primitive that we have in DarkFi because it can also be used by other smart contracts. So you could use it as the basis for a protocol-owned liquidity in a fully anonymous way. So that's one of the really exciting kind of tools, probably the most advanced application that we've designed. But there's two pillars to DarkFi applications. There's the kind of financial aspect that I've discussed, but then there's also, we have a big interest in anonymous coordination and communication in general. So we've also built a peer-to-peer anonymous chat, which is essentially IRC, but with a peer-to-peer backend. And we've also added additional kind of privacy features to that. So we have encrypted DMs, encrypted chat channels. And so we have this chat, that's where we run all of our operation. We also have a anonymous peer-to-peer task management system that we use alongside the chat. And so, we're also creating new kinds of coordination tooling, but the basic idea is that we want to be able to operate as a project in a way that's fully anonymous and deniable. So, they're the two pillars. In terms of current status of the project, I should mention, I said we're layer 1. We're using a proof of work consensus algorithm called RandomX, which some of you may know is a CPU mineable consensus algorithm. So that means that the goal here is that you'll be able to mine dark on consumer hardware, laptops, and so on. We've also planned it in such a way that we're going to do a merge mine with Monero, if you guys know that coin as well. Basically because Monero has this amazing altruistic network of miners that are super into privacy, so we want to give them an opportunity to mine dark as well. So yeah, the current status of the project is testnet. We're this week coming, we're about to release testnet beta, which is it's very, very close to being finished. So it's DarkFi. It's missing a few key elements, but the general purpose anonymous smart contracts are there working. All of the apps are working. The blockchain is running with the proof of work. But then, so we're shipping that this week. Then we have to add incentives, and we're going to do a bit more kind of hardening on the peer-to-peer network and similar updates and a lot of bug fixing and testing. But the goal is we're going to ship this testnet this week, another testnet in a couple months, and then 6 months after that, we're going to ship the mainnet. So we're aiming to ship the mainnet sometime this year, but it's really hard with developer timelines to be accurate. But that's our intention. So that's the how or the what of DarkFi. But why are we building this? So a lot of people will say why would you build a privacy project? No one cares about privacy. People are more than happy to go on Instagram or wherever and just give up all of their data to these companies, and no one really cares. So why would you bother with that? And anyway, they often say the whole surveillance thing with the AI, it's pretty much inevitable that we're all going to be spied on. And really it's just how technology goes, how technology progresses. So we encounter this sentiment a lot. So I wanted to give you guys 3 reasons why we're building this. It's not a definitive list. There are many other reasons I could point to, but I just wanted to pull out 3. So the first point is, the first reason is that Bitcoin and cryptocurrency was supposed to be unstoppable, permissionless, censorship-resistant finance, right? That was the original goal of Bitcoin. Bitcoin was the first uncensorable, fully transnational currency. But we failed to deliver that promise. Instead, we've started putting KYC on chain and basically making this massive decentralized panopticon. We're extending some of this really bad privacy features that we find in most technology. We're just integrating it into a blockchain or crypto paradigm. So it's a really bad mix. So we failed to deliver that promise. And a lot of people, they don't know that when Bitcoin was first released, people actually thought it was anonymous, right? It was something very novel. There were these addresses. They were alphanumeric strings. And then people thought if you buy with cash, then it's pretty much anonymous. That's just what was, even developers believed this in the early days. It wasn't until later that we learned that actually, Bitcoin's highly traceable. And Ethereum, in a way, is worse than Bitcoin in this way, because it has the accounts model. And you've seen how it's gone with ENS and everything else, where you can now Google someone's ENS and you can see the overview of everything that they've done in that wallet. And it's very, very difficult to break the link between accounts. There have been tools that try to do this. They've been, massively persecuted, and they're also very expensive on ETH. So it's a bad situation. In order to achieve fully borderless, permissionless, unstoppable, censorship-resistant, radically disruptive money and communication, which crypto is supposed to be, we need anonymity. So, that's reason one. We failed to deliver that. We're going to try and deliver that with DarkFi. Reason number one. Reason number two. So I wanted to bring this up because this is the first conference I've ever spoken at in Ireland. And I'm a big fan of Irish history. And when you look at Irish history, I mean, obviously, as we all know, there is many, many centuries of subjugation, and there was many generations that were trying to win back freedom for the Irish people. And a lot of that struggle, over the course of really centuries, there's many failed attempts, but eventually it kind of accumulated in this revolution that actually succeeded, right? And something that strikes me about this is that, there's no way that could have happened in a world where everything's under surveillance. So, the British Empire, this was a time before there were phones and computers, right? This is like pre-surveillance state. But the British Empire tried their best to keep everything under control and monitor everything, so persecuting the Irish language, which they did as much as they could, was a big part of this, right? Trying to control communication. They also did stuff like banning public gatherings or arresting people without trial. They did stuff like clearing a lot of the forested areas because they wanted to be able to see what was going on, make sure there was no rebel groups hiding in and around. So they basically, even though there was no surveillance per se, they tried their best to keep everything under control, have a bird's eye view of the whole situation. Responding to this, though, the rebels basically formed secret societies. They went underground and they used clandestine communication and met in secret. And they pioneered a new form of guerrilla warfare that, used information asymmetry and secrecy to their advantage. And, using these tactics, were able to bring the British Empire to their knees. So, when you look at those rebels as well, what they were fighting for at the time was freedom of self-determination, right? Which pretty much is, we can understand this as freedom to define the future, or to have authorship over the future, to define a different future, something other than the future that's been kind of passed down to us. So that's the freedom that they tried to achieve. And I believe that this is the freedom that's fundamentally under threat by surveillance. So surveillance is the biggest threat to freedom today. Anonymity fixes this. That's reason number two. Finally then, reason number three. I kind of mentioned this, but there's a lot of despondent attitudes, like people saying oh, what's the point? AI keeps expanding, surveillance is gonna just go everywhere, and our phones are gonna spy on us, and it's normal that our cars spy on us, and that our toothbrushes and our fridges and whatever else is all recording data, and we're spied on in our own homes. That's just progress, right? That's just how technology goes. But the thing is, what these people don't recognize is that nothing in technology is ever inevitable. Actually, the idea that surveillance is something that's inevitable is itself a propagandistic lie that's being created by nefarious interests, these kind of shadow figures who are trying to control the future. So, you're just falling into their narrative trap when you think that the future is something that we can't control, and that surveillance and the expansion of surveillance is something inevitable. So, in fact, we can change the future, and we want to prove these people wrong by releasing software that does that for us. And one of the nice things about technology is that while nothing is inevitable in the history of technology, technology turns in many directions and can be, brought in new directions. We can harness that. But while nothing is inevitable, certain things are irreversible. So, we're making DarkFi. It's free software, AGPL license. We're going to ship it as soon as possible. Put it online, give it to the public, So the technology is out there. That's an act which cannot be undone. You know, that's an irreversible act. So that's reason number 3. People think surveillance is inevitable and that you can't change the future. We're going to prove them wrong. So let there be dark. Thank you. Happy to take any questions. Oh, and I also have a couple stickers, and I also have philosophy books. So if anyone wants to talk to me afterwards, I can give you those.
As part of a protocol I'm working on at the moment, we're trying to solve some issues around collusion and bribery in voting and stuff around governance. So we've been experimenting with Mazy and like time lock puzzles and stuff like that. So I was just wondering, does DarkFi have any plans of making something related to that, or have you any thoughts on that in general?
So I'm actually not familiar with the tools that you mentioned, but I will say that, and you know, probably I saw Dr. Nick there nodding, so he probably knows more about this than me. But I will say that the DAO that we've built is kind of like the most basic DAO ever. Like it's like the simplest type of DAO that you could imagine. So literally, what it is you create the DAO and you ship like governance tokens to whoever you want to be in your DAO. And those governance tokens enable the people who hold them to create proposals and to vote on proposals. And then, you know, a proposal basically takes the form, you know, send such and such a money from the treasury to like a given address. And then people vote on that, yes, no. And when like you set these rules in the DAO, like the threshold that needs to be met for the number of governance tokens in order for the vote or proposal to go through. So once we meet that threshold, then other members of the DAO can execute the transaction, basically. So it's quite simple. Like a few things to note about it. It is fully anonymous, but it's limited in the sense that it is like full-on token holder governance. So basically, the more tokens you have, the more voice you have. Then on Ethereum, there's been like a lot of interesting work trying to do like quadratic voting and other kinds of like signaling that are like, you know, a little bit more nuanced than just straight up like token holder governance. So that'd be really interesting to include in DarkFi in the future. But the challenge there is like, how do you do this stuff in a way that's privacy preserving and anonymous? Because so far in ETH, as far as I know, probably maybe you guys have a better idea on this, but my understanding is that the best way to do like quadratic voting in that is like using Gitcoin and like GitHub logins basically. So obviously that's not very anonymous. And then, yeah, in terms of collusion resistance, like I would need to talk to you more about like what that specifically means and how that could relate to a DarkFi context. Yeah, totally. So no, we're definitely not immune to you know, the same kind of thing that happened to Tornado Cash. We're somewhat kind of anticipating it. So the goal for us, like, while we can't like guarantee our own like security, the best thing we can do is like make it so that even if the developers are persecuted and so on, the blockchain continues, and people are still able to use DarkFi. That would be the goal. Then there is some kind of differences in DarkFi and Tornado Cash. One of the things is that Tornado Cash was processing a huge volume from ETH. They haven't gone after any privacy L1s yet, like Monero or Zcash. Like maybe they will. Maybe it's a matter of time. But we're slightly different, like to something like Tornado Cash, in that we're our own L1. And when you're an anonymous L1, it's harder to distinguish between the money flows. So it's harder to say definitively, that's a North Korea or whatever. So like that's one, like I would say, technical difference. We do though like plan to enable like liquidity inflows from ETH, but again, everything we've built, we've tried to make it as much as possible like fully peer-to-peer permissionless, so we don't control it in any way. And I don't think this is the main issue at hand. I think it's more of a straw man. But like Tornado Cash, they made a few mistakes in that regard. So one of the things like we're trying to do with ETH is like atomic swaps, which is really nice. Doesn't require anyone, like hosting the. It's not a centralized bridge or anything. So yeah, we're trying to take that same kind of. We're trying to take it as a design challenge, effectively, to build things in a like permissionless and decentralized way as much as we can.
Hello. So I'm just curious if there was any particular reasoning behind choosing to build your own L1 versus making an Ethereum rollup. I think, for example, like Aztec is doing like something similar. So because like I think that for L1, it could be difficult to basically achieve a network effects that will be kind of cross that threshold for people to actually use it.
Yeah, we'll see. Like about the network effect, we'll see, because there are other L1s. Like Monero is actually a good example. And we're trying to onboard the Monero kind of community and user base through this merge mining, where we like share the coin with them in exchange for their hardware. So yeah, Monero I think is a good counterexample to the idea that like alternative L1s like never gain any traction. Obviously Bitcoin is another one. But no, it's a fair point. And the main reason is that for the L2s at the moment, a lot of them are using like these centralized sequencers. And actually, that was another thing that happened, where there was some L2, I can't remember which one, Polygon or something, that had a Tornado Cash on an L2 somewhere, and they were asked by the US government to like put sniffers like on the sequencer to like surveil Tornado Cash traffic. So like basically we were concerned about the lack of censorship resistance that comes from using an L2. Not to say that the L2s can't be like fully censorship resistant and decentralized. I think they can be, and maybe Aztec is going to create something like this. If it comes out in the future and it's something that we think is good enough, that then maybe we can change and integrate that. It's not such a huge deal. Like we tried to build DarkFi in a way that it's modular and we can swap things out. Like the first version of DarkFi was actually proof of stake. So now we've like ditched that. We made a proof of work. So we can tweak this stuff. The other thing that we're considering is like if there's the interoperability is like the big kind of one of the really interesting crypto research topics that other people are working on. So like if they figure that out and we get stuff like into blockchain communication, IBC, that's working well. So there's project like Anomaly, Penumbra, Nomada, they're all doing IBC. So if they can figure that out and it works, then maybe we can integrate that. So we're basically trying to see like the L2 wars and the IBC wars, let that play out, like see who wins. and then we can update the code if needs be. But for now, we're just really focused on, like, let's get the anonymity working with the programmable anonymous smart contracts.
Thank you very much for that. It was fantastic. So now I would like to invite to stage Laurence. He's the co-founder of Wildcat Protocol and Twitter superstar.
GM, I promise I will not be talking about Wildcat today. In fact, this will not be a talk that would typically fit into a security or a privacy track. But here I am. I was condemned by my law school to finish an exam yesterday, which means that there are no slides. I apologize. So I'm very much going to be winging this. I do not think it will be of the quality of that very, very good talk by Rachel. Thank you again. So, anyone in the room, has anyone ever written a solver before? Has anyone thought about writing a solver before? Does anyone, who's familiar with what a solver is? Not very many. All right, fine, we will get into that. How about this? Have any of you used 1-inch fusion, cow swap, or bebop to effect an asset trade? Great. Would you like to sue your counterparty? Yes. Fantastic. This might be possible. So, I went to law school and again have just finished on the basis of having previously worked at a protocol which was attacked, finding the perpetrator and filing a lawsuit against him, having then realized that we were talking to solicitors that we weren't really familiar with what crimes had been committed or indeed what statute book to throw, prompted me to go, I'll do it myself, so I did. It turns out going to a UK university for law school does not give you the Ethereum experience that you'd expect. A lot of it's criminal and tort law. I know more about trusts than I ever want to. However, one thing that I did get to do in my dissertation was talk about whatever I wanted, so I made it Ethereum related. So, we just heard a lot about peer-to-peer interactions and transactions and what have you. And this is, beyond the account model, very much the way that Ethereum has worked as well. You have a smart contract, you engage with it in the way that you want, so you decide functions that you're going to execute, you pass the parameters, you affect things. We're starting to see stuff now with kind of account abstraction where you can do third-party gas payments and generally abstracting away the fact that you don't have to be the one that does things for yourself. And this is what has been referred to in the round, I think popularized by Anomaly as the intents-based model. So an example would be the difference between me going and getting a pizza and me posting someone going, I will give 20 quid to someone who brings me a pizza. I'm assuming that the pizza is going to cost less than 20 quid and they can just keep the change. So when you're using bebop or when you're using 1-inch or when you're using cow swap, what's happening is that you are crafting an intent. You are saying, this is the asset that I want to buy, this is the asset I want to swap with, this is how much I want to, this is how much slippage. This is different to just interacting with a regular AMM, like something out of Uniswap v2. Because what's actually happening under the hood is that your intent is being broadcast into a private mempool, something that's app-specific, not private in the sense of anonymity. But counterparties are looking to see if they can execute it for you. So it might be Wintermute's Resolver, which is probably the best name that we've ever given something in crypto, given that it's Riz, R-A-Z-Z. Or someone who's developed something independently. What they're doing is they're scanning for transactions, or they're committing to auctions to say, like, can I execute this swap and get given like a gas rebate or being able to make a profit in an execution fee for you? This has become a huge cottage industry for quite a number of people, if you can do it yourself. There are ways that you can onboard. You can either put down I think you can give like $500,000 as a stake for CowSwap, only to then get clapped by Wintermute's private inventory, or you can go through KYC and be whitelisted. I think this is how it works on like Bebop. Now, here's the thing. We hire people for services, various capacities. I'm currently looking at having to move to Newcastle because God hates me. But in doing so, I am speaking to a real estate agent. Don't move to Newcastle, please. The only reason I have to go is because my wife works for the NHS. In doing that, they are acting as an agent for me. They are legally permitted to enter into contracts for me. They have authority that establishes this is, what you're allowed to do on my behalf. And so what I dug into for my dissertation was, holy shit, are solvers agents? Are we giving them legal powers? And this seems weird in a crypto setting, given the inspiration originally behind permissionless funding and being able to subvert clearinghouses and the legal system, where we do occasionally clash with things like we're seeing stuff with like the FIT bill and the SAB bill. We're seeing the travesty of the conviction of Alexei, and we'll probably see another one when the machine wants to send a message when they convict Roman. You should donate on Juicebox if you haven't already. Is that what's happened by introducing this idea of intents, where someone can execute something for you, is that we're introducing ties that bind between you and the person that's performing an action for you. It doesn't have to be an asset swap. It can be anything, right? It can be, you can do this on Gnosis for safe. If you meet a threshold of signatures, someone can execute that for you. Does that make them an agent that's executing code on your behalf? Don't really know. Now, this is interesting, especially in the context of asset swaps, which is where I focused. Because if you're an agent for someone, you owe your principal duties, because you're a fiduciary. How many of us are familiar with what that means beyond, like, it's got some legal binding? Grand. If you are a fiduciary of someone, you owe them several duties. They are at the top of duty of care exhortations in English law. That's, I cannot speak for Irish law, I cannot speak for EU law. I went to Leeds, I'm sorry. Primary amongst those is the duty of loyalty. There are other things such as the duty of no profit, the duty to not self-deal, the duty of no conflict of interests. There's many others. They're all very boring, and no one particularly cares unless they breach them. But breach them, we might be doing. This has been fun, because I ended up publishing things and immediately causing a massive argument in the crypto law argument. Gabe Shapiro immediately had things to say. But the upshot of this is that a couple of things. Right now, there is no generalized intent mempool. They're coming. We're seeing a couple of ERCs for them. But the long and short is, if I'm performing a swap and it's settled through 1-inch fusion, let's say I'm swapping wrapped Ether for USDC and I get positive slippage, like something in my favor. 1-inch used to keep that as a platform. Not the solver, the person that actually solved it for you. And that's good, because it turns out that means that they are literally breaking the law and something in strict liability. Other things would be things such as airdrops. Let's say that you are operating a solver, you're performing asset swaps for people, and by virtue of doing so, because you've routed through AMMs, you become eligible for an airdrop. It may be, again, we don't know because there's no precedent, there's no statute on this in English law. It may be possible that you could then find and sue your solver to distribute any airdrop tokens to them. And in a weird little callback then to Tornado and dusting, this I think is very funny, and I actually intend to do this to try and prove a point. We're all familiar, I hope most of us are familiar with how LPs work for AMMs, right? So you deposit halves of assets, or like in contribution, you get your LP token in exchange. That gives you the right to funds based on volume that goes through. One of the things that you're not allowed to do as a fiduciary, as I said, is make profit or to self-deal. You can't operate on behalf of the person that you're... Sorry? Bit. I don't want to put this too much closer. Okay, turns out I've not been using the mic as effectively as I could have been the entire time. I'm very sorry. If there's anyone in the back that wants me to run this back, I'll do it later. Great. I'm so sorry. The gain on this is not great. This feels very phallic. I'm not comfortable with the way this is going for me. I've completely lost my train of thought now. Please give me 5 seconds to reboot. Yes, thank you so much, Rachel. We're familiar with the meme of dusting people with Tornado notes that have been given out. Like the deal was we sent a couple of Wave from Tornado to Jimmy Fallon. And I think someone immediately sent some to the BlackRock Biddle Fund, because in theory they're tainted with strict liability, which is both pointless and deeply funny. It turns out that if we ever see a judgment in English law that says that solvers are fiduciaries or agents, and I think it's probably quite likely given the way that we define control of property, that let's say that you want to go through a swap from Tether to USDC, and the best place for that to go would be through Curve, right? Very likely to be Curve. If someone is a fiduciary acting for you, and you send that solver a tiny bit of an LP for the 3 pool, they are legally not permitted to make that swap through Curve, even if it's the best one for you to make. It's a breach of strict liability because they are going to be making profit from the volume that goes through Curve. They have to go somewhere else. Now, in practice, this is very much kind of picking at the edges of like pettiness, because the reality is someone's going to be like, oh, you've made a fraction of a cent. But it's not like we're not seeing really petty cases being filed. Look at the case that was filed for Pull Together. Joseph Kent filed, he put $10 in Pull Together and then said he was concerned about the environment. So as a Warren staffer, he wants Leighton in prison. This is probably bad. We probably shouldn't be trying to wind legal systems into stuff, but I don't think anyone thought that this is what was going to happen. Interesting, and annoyingly, I haven't really got much by way of precedent to kind of lean on to go, I think this is the way this is going to go. Mercifully, the Law Commission in the UK is being really, really good about sensibly thinking through how crypto assets should be handled. It's very much not the United States. Also helped by the people that are writing the reports tend to be anons on CT. There are far more people that work in policy units in the UK that are shitposting on Twitter than you'd imagine. Which is a real surprise to me. Tying this then into privacy and security, I think it's a good thing that none of you are writing solvers, I imagine, because the advice that I would be to give you is maybe don't for a little while, or if you do, certainly don't use any platforms that would require you to KYC. And moreover, if you're going to write any code, don't write it in a way that would be tieable to you. I think if you're a developer of kind of any experience, you start recognizing the code that like certain institutions write. Like you can see Viper and you can be like, okay, this is Charles Cooper, this is Banteg, etc. I'm just pacing back and forth. Apologies. I'm trying to walk off the hangover. I don't think that there's really much to be concerned about here right now, but it was very much an interesting little experiment into like digging into, oh, we've opened up this weird Pandora's box in the name of efficiency. I don't know where it goes or what it leads to. I hope that we probably end up looking at something in statute in English law that we can rely on thereafter that says, okay, actually this is fine. But yeah, not really much of a point there, except perhaps just use Uni v2 for a bit. I guess to close off, the weird thing is that, you know, as a solver, you might be breaching fiduciary or agent duties left, right, and center. But this kind of loops into one of the really funny things about law in general, not just English law, is that it's effectively impotent. I might not know that my counterparty solver is both resident and has servers running in London. So, I mean, I don't think anyone has ever performed a swap and then checked to see who executed it for them, what address, right? You'll check your Etherscan and you'll be like, okay, well, have the assets arrived? That's fine. No one really cares who's like pulled the trigger, which is a good thing and still pretty cypherpunk because it means that someone has performed a task for you and you didn't know who they were. Like they don't know who you were, they couldn't give a shit because all they care about is their profit and you don't know who's done it for you. I think there might be some like leeway there for that. I have no nice way of ending this talk. It's been fascinating. I don't recommend going to law school to make a point. But if it turns out in future that I get called into Parliament to talk about this stuff with any expert witnesses, I'm sorry. Any questions? Please. My king. Yep. It's all right. Neither am I. I just did the degree, right? It's weird because like a fiduciary duty, like a financial advisor is a good example, but there's this weird counterexample that goes, you become a fiduciary by having fiduciary duties. It's not something that's imposed the other way around. And I think as an ME researcher in the round that's just operating on a mempool rather than doing stuff as on a platform, I think you're fine. I would argue that you are fine. I think where things become maybe mildly controversial at this point is where what's happening is you are volunteering yourself to be the counterparty for a for an intent on a platform. Yeah, yeah. I think that's where it is right now. Like, if you're volunteering yourself up, or like asking to be registered, I think that's where it is. And it's not so much that you don't have a license or anything of the sort. The reason I wanted to dig into this is because the liabilities are strict. It doesn't matter like what it is you are or aren't doing. Which is what made this really interesting to dig into. It's like, I wasn't aware that this is how things work. And my take is also that it doesn't matter. I think one of the things I wanted to do here was be like, look at what the law says. We can safely disregard this because it's so weird to apply. Like, again, if you're operating a searcher, I will vanishingly unlikely be able to connect you to your address. I would suggest reading my dissertation, but please don't, because it's horrible. It's only 13 pages long, but it's got more of the reasoning in it, and I am too hungover to go into more detail, but I'll happily talk to you about it afterwards. It's all right, I just finished an LLB. Sorry, shit joke. Thank you very much, everyone. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, no. It's
You don't have to do it again.
I'm just trying to, like, I think you've made a very coherent argument of how you could definitely pin fiduciary duties on these, like, actors, right? But it feels like, and like, nitpicking at the edges, definitely what this is. And I feel like there's just so much of this everywhere that you could basically construct a reason why everyone has got strict liability on them. We're all going to jail, right? Which actually makes the point of why we need DarkFi and things like that, right? Because so like the thing that's going to happen with the MEV brothers, right, that did that, there's been points where you sort of like, it's the dark forest, right? We're all baiting each other into trades, and it's an hyper-adversarial game, crypto-economic game. But then you do the wrong little bit, and then it's 20 years in jail. Like 20 years, potentially, for those guys. So there's just like, it feels like there's all these landmines at the end. The pipeline starts with a legal theory. And then you find some way to pin it on this random, crypto-economic thing at the edge of chaos that no one's ever seen before. Here's this 100-years-old law that gets you 30 years in jail. Yeah, I'm interested in just how you rationalize this and what's going on here, what your thoughts on that is. Is it fair that these, like, random devs at the sort of edge of innovation are going to, like, just get serious book thrown at them to make a point? Yeah, I'm just like, what's your read on that whole context?
I mean, the answer is the machine will send whatever messages the machine wants, right? Yeah. And whether it's you, me, or everyone that works at DarkFi that goes into Tartarus as a result is ultimately not something that we can do except prepare for. It's weird. The reason I wanted to tinker about with this is because whilst the UK Law Commission has been pretty good at like saying this is a reasonable interpretation of things, we might have to account for the fact that because there's nothing settled here, this could go the other way around, right? Like, we haven't seen statute that goes, all of you are going to jail, but we could. So it's probably more interesting to prep for like the arguments that are going to be made against us, because solvers aren't even like, the concept of intents isn't enshrined in Ethereum yet. It's still morphing. And like all the discussion about Suave is still kind of, like in flux. So I ended off my dissertation by suggesting maybe the Law Commission should be like trying to engage on this topic in particular before it becomes something where they feel like or want to have no option except throw the book. I don't think it's fair, for example. I will will not be the person that like has the final say or changes anyone's mind on like the justice of Tornado Cash or Samurai or what have you. But in terms of a kind of like more around the edges stuff, like I think solvers are useful. I think searches are useful. I don't want my friends to be going to jail. But I think we would be well served by being aware of what it is that we are doing wrong, not that we are actually committing a wrong, because of law that was settled before electric street lamps came to London, which is bullshit, right? But that's the way that precedent works. We can like it or not. So I don't know what this looks like in terms of where I want to go with it. I have Wildcat to work on. So it's not like I'm going to become like a high-powered lawyer arguing about this. I will not be Britain's Gabe. I don't want to be. He can do that himself. It's interesting. I think what I did was I said, look, here's something that maybe someone should look at in future. And we'll see. The hangover's gone now. Great. Thank you very much, everyone.
Thank you very much, Laurence. So next we have Ruben Merre from NGRAVE.
Thank you. I'm just going to put it here. Laurence, quick question. What's written on your T-shirt? The small print.
Oh, it's code is not illegal, and it's the Tornado Cash to liberty.
Wow, love it. Thanks. So, thank you, Rachel Rose, as well. You spoke about surveillance today. On one aspect, I will speak about surveillance a little bit as well, on the total other end of the spectrum. But first of all, my name is Ruben Merre. I am co-founder and CEO of a company called NGRAVE. I've been doing this for 6 years. We are specialized in security. We've been doing that for the last 6 years as well. We have a retail arm where we actually sell consumer self-custody. So the device that we have as our cold wallet is the one right here. It's called Zero. It's special in the sense that it is 100% air-gapped, so 100% offline. You cannot connect it in any way to the internet or any other devices. And it has one very peculiar thing going for it. It is the only financial product in the world that has an EAL7 security certification. So that's actually higher than the highest grade bank. The reason why I'm telling you this is simply because our first rule at NGRAVE is and has always been that we will never compromise on the security of our users. So we will never compromise on your security. So 6, 7 years ago, I was a customer of the existing cold wallets, and I saw a lot of things that I didn't like. So I decided to build something myself, of course, backed by a fantastic team. So what I want to talk about with you today, and this is going to be a little bit more slides than we saw before, but your hardware wallet is actually not as cold as you think. So I don't have a clicker. I don't know if there is a clicker. Okay. So for those who are not so familiar with it yet, these are all hardware wallets. My hardware wallet is not on here. We will come back to it, but of course you can see it's all about how do you use physical devices to make your crypto security something that's actually, at the point where you want it to be. One high-level step back is, of course, what can you use today? And all of these solutions are great. It just depends on the context. If you want to go to the grocery store and you want to pay for something with, let's say, a wallet that has 1% of your total net worth, that's totally okay. You don't need a cold wallet for that. You could, but I would recommend potentially even just using a mobile application. So the question here is more like, if you want to store a lot of your money, where would you put it? And we know about exchanges, especially here in the room. For the last many years, exchanges actually own your keys. They can do everything they want with it. They can also get hacked themselves. They can completely misuse your money in a way that you don't want. And of course, that makes them a bit fall out of the boat of where should you actually keep 80–90% of your assets. Hot wallets, same thing. I would say it all comes down to it's online, and whatever is online essentially means that it can be attacked. If we think one step further, we have quantum computing, we have generative AI, put those things together in a pot, and what do you get? You get an extremely dangerous mix every time you interact with the online world. So again, that's why we decided to go fully offline. And then third, cold wallets are a great concept. So they make your keys offline, they manage your keys offline, they sign transactions offline. But as I said, it's basically still a question mark how good they really are. And here you see, let's say, a bit of a mix of what they could look like. So the oldest school cold wallets are USB. So we have like KeepKey, we have Trezor, we have Ledger. I think everybody knows those. At some point, Ledger added Bluetooth to the device. So again, it's a connected technology. NFC, near-field communication, something you can use when you tap your card in a shop, for example. And the ones I personally prefer the most is the QR code-based ones. So there you really have that air gap ID of there is no, let's say, there is nothing going on that you can actually intercept. What do I mean by that? Let's say you sign a transaction with one of the other wallets. Your device will always be creating radio frequencies. And to keep it very simple, if you are signing a transaction with your cold wallet, I can actually Shazam your private key based on the radio frequencies that come out of your device. So if you look into a cold wallet, what is actually important is to see if that is applicable. So for us, for example, we decided to make it out of metal and to make it a cage of Faraday so that there is never at any point in time any radio frequency dissipation that can be used to get your private key. It's extreme, but you always have to think about the what ifs, and there simply are so many that, you know, back to the first principle, we don't compromise on your security. A really big step back, I'm not sure if this is perfect for this audience, but it's something that I think it's always good to have a quick refresher on, just to understand what we're really talking about. So what is a private key in the sense of how beautiful is it and how crackable is it? So if we look here, yeah, sorry, thanks. How difficult is it to guess my private key? So theoretically, this is fantastic. If you do not know my private key, the only thing you can do is you can try all the possible combinations, and you can try to break it, so brute force it. A private key in Bitcoin, a private key in Ethereum has 256 bits. That means it is 256 Z1s and 1s that follow each other in a random order. So how difficult is it to try all of those combinations until you end up to my wallet? This is more or less true. Let's say that to keep it simple, it is true. But if we go to the very first line here, 28 bits, so one odd out of 140 million is that you will win the Euro Millions, which is something never of us ever do. So that looks extremely easy on this chart. If you want to become the richest man on earth and you want to become $200, $300 billion more wealthy, what you need to do is very simple. You need to guess Elon Musk's bank account number. You need to guess his two-factor authentication code and his PIN code. That's it. So that's here. So that's a number that goes a billion times a billion. It's quite impressive. To go a bit further, you end up with how many atoms are there on Earth. So that's 170 bits. If you want to guess a random private key that actually has funds on it, these are the odds. So it's much less than actual atoms on the planet of Earth. And then ultimately, theoretically, so the private key you have, or that people are trying to break, if you are offline and they can't find it, is right here. So it's about comparable to 10 to the 18th power, which is currently the estimated amount of atoms in the universe. So to keep it simple, you're asking the question, which atom does Ruben have in his head somewhere circulating around somewhere in another part of the universe? So that means that whichever brute force supercomputer you have, we're not even close to the day that this will happen. But obviously, we're speaking about a beautiful paradox here. Theory is always great, but once you go into practice, it becomes, where did you write down your private key? Did you put it on your computer? Did you download it in a file? And so basically, how difficult did you make it to find? And typically, that will be much, much easier to do and to break than the previous slide that you saw. So where is the key generated? Very important. Every cold wallet should have a secure element. Why? Because that's a chip that has been perfected over the last decades to do one thing, to basically do two things. One thing, create a very strong random private key, because in the end, you need to get to a point where you can have a key that is very unique and that cannot be reproduced by a bad process. So that happens, a ledger has that, we have that, we all use secure chips. Fun fact is that Trezor didn't do that until, I think, this year or last year, because they are open source and their vision is open source. So you could crack open a Trezor in 10 minutes time. Today, they actually had to go into the secure element because otherwise security from a cold wallet perspective would have been very low. So every cold wallet has a chip like this. It does two things. As it generates the key, and after that, the key will always remain safe in that chip. What's also important to note in terms of, let's say, fun fact security there is it is also designed to wipe itself and the key when it knows it's under attack. So good versions of this chip, if you put an antenna on it, it will notice that and it will just wipe your key. So these chips are important. You see that Ledger has their own operating system that runs on top of it. We have that as well. As you see, secure elements are typically EAL5 certified. Our OS that we wrote ourselves is EAL7 certified, so that's the highest you can achieve. So that's a bit like the intro to this primer, and then of course we come to how cold is your wallet really. And that's a bit where I want to segue on top of what Rachel Rose said about surveillance. This is where it gets really interesting. So first of all, ideally you should never accept a key from your cold wallet. And unfortunately, that is what we all do. If you get a ledger, you get a Trezor, they give you a key on the screen, you can write it down, or you can throw your device away. You don't really have any other option. And today, there are actually a lot of fake ledgers in circulation. It's almost mind-blowing how many there are. So the first thing you should actually do if you buy a ledger is you open the USB stick. It's not that difficult to do. And you check, is it this version or is it this version? If it's this version, then ideally you throw it away. Trezor uses tamper stickers, which are actually easily reproducible. But the good thing is that Ledger actually has something that's crucial, which is a genuine check. So it just, the first time you use your device, you check, has my device been tampered with? Is it the actual Ledger device? So never skip this step. So you put your device into the computer and you check with them and their servers to see this is a real Ledger device. We do that as well. So we use QR codes. So you simply scan that QR code on your device. You will get a code that you can push back as with the verify response kind of thing you have with banks. And then at least you know that you are using a proper device of the right manufacturer. And then this is where it becomes freaky. So if we talk about backdoors, these chips that I spoke about are crucial. Without them, you have bad keys and bad security. But the problem is that, and you can look this up on a simple Google search, they're pretty much all backdoored. Meaning there are central intelligence agencies from certain countries that help certify the process of setting up these chips. And they can, let's say, almost predict what key will come out on the other side. Which is, of course, also, again, the last thing that you want. Luckily, for us, there are ways to circumvent all of this and to resolve all of this. That's what we worked on also a long time for ourselves. But before we go there, so let's say our approach to security is as simple as it gets. It's what if? What if the manufacturer of my cold wallet has a database somewhere and every key they ever give to a user, they actually keep a record of it? That's a simple question. We ask that question all the time. And it's our guiding question to every decision we ever make. So a solution for this, for example, is to, let's say, use Coldcard, which is one of the oldest standing cold wallets. What they do is they ask you to press 99 times a number from 1 to 6. They call it a dice roll. And it has been proven that this comes with, let's say, reasonable math to get to a better key. We do something as well. So what we do is we simply use entropy, so randomness, that comes from outside of your chip. So we use the chip because it's strong in what it does, but we just add things from outside of it. So your biometrics are one of them. We use light sensory, happens to be one of the best sources of entropy and randomness. So we basically include external factors to what your chip is doing. And that on its own already does a lot. So the way we would do it is say we make we do everything offline. So it's you and your device. There's nobody there that can eavesdrop. Partly we use the chip, partly we use environmental factors. And of course, all of that is something that we could fake. We could completely make you believe that we are doing things that we're not. So the last step where we go is we let you interact with the key. So normally this would be showing you how that works, but essentially it comes down to you have your key, you change a few things in that key, and you can sit back, relax, and know that also the manufacturer on our side, we have no idea what your final key can be. And so to sum that up, we have supply chain attacks, we have fake devices, we have pre-programmed keys. They're backdoors from practically any possible direction you can think of, even from the manufacturer themselves. And what you can do about it is you can tamper-proof, you can tamper-resolve. So there are different ways you can work against that. You have to make sure that you don't just rely on the chip. And maybe the user interaction can be an option if you do it smart, because people are predictable. So you have to find a way to do it that it still gives you a good key in the end of the day. And then, because of course I could be talking about this for a century, but the last thing and the most important thing is this: it's gold should mean cold. So why am I showing you a picture of a nuclear power plant? It's because I want to give you an idea of how dangerous it is to use connected technology. And this is actually about USB sticks. So in the, let's say, the late 2010s, it came out that there was a virus called the Stuxnet virus. And it was, let's say, co-developed by Israel, US, and Netherlands. What it did was it just was a malware. There was a worm. It would replicate through computers into their USB drivers, basically automatically. And it would only start, let's say, activate itself when it would be in the fully air-gapped, offline environment of a nuclear power plant. So it actually ended up in Iran. And what it does is it interferes with how the PLCs, like the programming logic controllers, how they close and open valves of the nuclear enrichment centrifuge. And what actually made them, let's say, break themselves. And it really delayed the program of Iran by a few years. So that's the power of, let's say, the danger of using a connected technology as simple as USB, which is what almost all of our cold wallets do today. When you go into other, let's say, technologies like Bluetooth, NFC, you can rest assured that you still have similar enormous risks. So I would recommend that ideally you go to a wallet that is fully air-gapped, fully offline, where you simply don't have a remote attack vector whatsoever. Much more to say about this, but we have a time that we have to respect. So happy to take any questions. So just here to round up again, if you have connected technology, it's a honeypot for attacks, even up to nuclear power plants, which is just mind-blowing that it's possible. So yeah, air-gap as much as possible. And also, one thing I haven't touched upon is sometimes, maybe always, your backup may actually be more important than your cold wallet, because you can lose your device, but if you lose your backup, then you lose everything. Story for another day, but please don't use paper. There are better solutions for that as well. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that.
So I don't know much about the hardware or anything, but I had a question about the, because you spoke a lot about the connectivity of the device, and I saw there was some attack. Again, I don't know the technicalities of it, but that with the ledger, it said definitely Trezor, but also ledger, that if you have physical access to the device, it's possible to extract the private keys. Like, what about your design makes that like less viable?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So that's basically the two angles you have. You have the online connectivity and the attack vectors there. And then, of course, you have what happens if you get access to my device. So what we've done is we've built our device from scratch. So every decision based on transistor, chip, whatever it needed to be, we did that from the ground up with one purpose again, and which was we will never compromise on your security. So that needs to be implemented across the end-to-end of the whole customer journey. So that's also why in the end I say backup is actually part of it. So we have a stainless steel backup for that as well. But if you go back to the device, so we saw several layers of anti-tampering that we needed to create. The first one is literally just about tamper resistance. So our device is made out of metal. It's not tamper-proof to the extreme, but at least it makes it hard to get through that first layer to be able to get into the device. The second layer is more about tamper evidence. So let's say you make that hole, it will be clear that there's a hole in your device. Also, if the first time you use your device, you have that step where you check if, let's say, somebody pre-programmed something in your device. If that's the case, then our servers will be able to tell you that. The third level is about tamper responsiveness. So if you, let's say, take off the screen of our device, it will wipe the keys. So there are many of these mechanisms that makes it a smart device that knows when it's under attack. But that said, all those three levels can get you up to a certain, let's say, point, and then it just depends on the sophistication of the attacker. Like, how far can they get? How much are they willing to pay to get that far per wallet? So that's also why we have a level 4, which is tamper resolution. So, which essentially comes when you as a user interact with the key generation process. So if you change a few things in that final key, it doesn't matter who pre-programmed the key in there, they will never receive anything, and you will still have a good key, which of course is fully based on the principles of entropy. You just add a little flavor to it that makes it a crucial difference. And well, unfortunately, we're the only ones who do that today. And yeah, you can always ask yourself the question, why is that? But I cannot give you the answer of the competition. I can only tell you that we do it. Yeah. Yep. Yep. So let's say about paper wallets. Our first impression of paper wallets was, of course, we have this crazy technology. We're doing DarkFi things to mask everything that we're doing. We're literally coming into a whole new age of technology, and at the other side is, and the keys we have for them, we put them on a piece of paper. So for us, when we looked at that from end-to-end perspective of what happens if you lose your wallet, you need to have a backup. We saw paper wallets, and the first thing we found completely ridiculous was that nobody even does the incremental innovations that you could do to make that a more resilient paper wallet. So if you buy one from us, well, you get it with the device, but you will get one that is waterproof, that is unshreddable, so at least it is resistant to a certain amount of things. Currently, every cold wallet or every wallet where you get a piece of paper does not have that. We don't understand why. But then again, for us, the paper wallet is not the answer. The way we looked at it was twofold. One is you can use cryptography, which today is becoming much, much more prevalent in the form of like social recovery, summary secret sharing, things like that, MPC. But you're still reliant quite a bit on, of course, how that implementation works, on whether the summary secret sharing has been implemented well. So for us, let's say the core of the start, our goal was always to become, let's say in terms of company, a company that would also help institutions be better in what they do. But we started with the hardware first, because the hardware needs to be impeccable before you can actually start building a platform on top of it. So what we did for the backup, for the retail customer, is you get a stainless steel solution, which can literally survive almost everything. And we added 2 layers, which might be a bit too much to show you, but you can go to our website, you will see there. There is a layer of encryption. So it means that you can actually split your backup in 2 parts, and you can keep those parts separate. So if somebody finds your paper wallet today, they have your full key. You can cut it in 2 parts of 12 words, and then I find 12 words, I have to brute force the other part. In our setup, the encryption is such that each plate is meaningless. So you need both plates, both exact plates together. And even if you lose them, you can actually recover them in a fairly decentralized way. So we made your backup, let's say, durable, encrypted, and recoverable, all with stainless steel. So why is it stainless steel? Because technology can degrade. If you would put it on a, let's say, a USB stick or whatever, you put it in a vault, at some point it will be you could actually say it's sort of almost using the idea of a shamir and apply it to really core stainless steel, tangible, physical security. So something that can literally withstand the next 500 years compared to whatever you will put in a... Yeah, sure. Yep. So it's not Shimmer secret sharing we're using on there. We're using our own protocol to make sure. We always try to make our own technology if it's relevant. But I encourage you to have a look at the website. You will see it. It's called Graphene. That's our backup solution. Yeah.
Come on, guys. 4. Yeah, is Conor Fallon here? While we're setting up here, guys, Owen here is going to tell you a little bit about the treasure hunt, ETHDublin treasure hunt, which relates to one of the panelists on our next panel.
Hey guys, so myself and Jacob here have organized just a small treasure hunt for you. There's 9 NFC chips hidden around the venue, both down here and up in the urban garden. We have prizes ranging from about $25 to $200 to IRL apparel. So have a look around, scan them with your phone if you find them. Take them away because it's a first come, first served prize. And yeah, happy hunting.
Brilliant, Owen. Thanks a million. Don't be shy. Woo, woo. Just while I'm getting set up here. So how's it all going? Really, really interesting talks, right? Have you been enjoying yourselves? Great. Everyone's getting tired. Okay, we are looking at Saturday. Sorry. So this amazing panel, which is the last one of the day, is a panel about building on Ethereum. The speakers are McGee from Aztec, she's Dev Relations, Conor Fallon, lead designer at Consensys, Jacob Haap, software architect at Anomaly Science and co-author of the treasure hunt you just heard about. And this panel is going to be excellently moderated by Ornella Vallana, who is Web3 educator at Bankless Academy.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Fiona. Well, let's do this. All right.
Should I pass out these microphones?
All right. Welcome, everyone. Still GM at any time of day, as usual. Super happy to be here with you at Dublin, first time. Excited for this interesting panel with a very beautiful topic, which is building on Ethereum. We're all builders in different perspectives, so really interested to hear what our panelists here have to say. A brief intro about Bankless Academy, what I do in case you want to share with your friends, family. We do Web3 education, so if anyone asks you what is Ethereum, what is blockchain, please feel free to share Bankless Academy with them so they can learn Web3 from scratch. All right, now to our panel. Please, I'll give the word to each one of you to share what connects us here. Conor had a tweet the other day. He was like, okay, what are we doing here? What motivates us? So I think it's really important to share that aha moment, why we decided to build on Ethereum, why not on other platforms. So yeah, connect that please with a brief intro of yourselves, and then please pass on to your aha moments.
Yeah, sure, I'll go first, yeah. So I was working in London around about 2017, and I read an article by Vitalik Buterin about futarchy. I don't know, is anybody familiar with the concept of futarchy as a governance mechanism? So it's a concept by a guy called economist called Robin Hanson. And the idea is basically, as a community, you can vote on your values, and you can bet on ways that you can achieve those values. And it's a super interesting concept, but I didn't understand how it could actually be applied in the real world. And it turns out that you could use blockchain technology through, that was Vitalik's blog post, was basically this is entirely achievable through working on Ethereum. And it was at that moment that I just thought this is a really incredible piece of technology, a really revolutionary piece of technology. And yeah, I started working from there on, that was like my aha moment and the rabbit hole that I kind of fell down, you know. Yeah, so since then, I've worked on a very 2017 era blockchain application, which was tracking diamonds on blockchain, which was sort of popular at that time. Yeah, so that was how I fell down that rabbit hole, basically.
Interesting. Thank you for sharing. Jacob, your turn.
Yeah, so I guess the way that I got to Ethereum came from a student hackathon that I attended way back around like 2018 or so. I've been following Ethereum for a bit before that, but just kind of interested in what goes on with it, never did anything developer-like with it. And I was about 15 at the time, and at that age was kind of obsessed with everything around tokens and crypto trading. And I decided that at that hackathon I wanted to make a tokenized project, so I deployed my first ERC20 token at the time. And just along the way was learning there's a lot of stuff you could do with this, and no one was doing anything with it at the time, especially at my age. You didn't have many people who even knew what blockchain was. So then about a few years ago, about 3 years ago, I started with my current company, and just having already built on that experience of knowing what Ethereum is, the type of stuff you could build with it, I was like, I could probably do something here. So that's where I got to now building my company, Anomaly Science, out of Berlin. I guess quick overview over that is we were developing a tokenized solution for software licensing along with different Web3 developer tools.
Wow, interesting. Tory hackers here. Yeah, interesting to relate to that if you're hacking this weekend. Kat, all yours.
Yeah, so my aha moment came from Bitcoin originally for purposes that I probably shouldn't talk about on camera. But I was into that, and I was like, on those websites, and then started looking into why do we need to use Bitcoin here? Why can't I use my bank? And I learned more about the centralization of money and how the number that you see on your bank account is not what you own, it's what you're owed. And I just was like, this is insane, that sucks. And then I put all my money into Bitcoin, which is maybe not a good idea. But after that, I was using. I was in Toronto and I was like using Google, and my stuff was located like it was all about Canada, and I was like, how does Google know this? Like, it seems to just be where I am and who I am is what it's giving me data. So I started looking into like Google and Facebook and all these massive companies, and I realized that they also own everything on the internet, and the whole web works the same way as banks. Like, it's all just this centralized data mining shit. Like, it's terrible. And I was like, what the hell? So that's how I found Ethereum. And this was 2017, 2016, like same time as you guys. So I was a comp sci student at the time, so I started like learning Solidity and how I can develop applications on Ethereum, and wanted to make like an ETH Twitter, as I think everyone did when we first started. And yeah, then I started working at Aave. I was one of the first engineers there back when they were like ETHLand transitioning into Aave, and that was like a cult, and it was really cool. And been in it since then, and now I'm doing developer relations at a company called Aztec, which I think was mentioned earlier. We're a privacy first L2 on Ethereum, so you can build like private smart contracts and kind of what I think crypto was supposed to be in the first place.
Fantastic, thank you. All right, let's continue now with a little bit of feedback from the audience. Who has been in this space of Web3 crypto in any capacity for more than 3 years? All right, thank you. And who is here for the first time, or is this their first Ethereum event? All right, look at that. Okay, that gives a good sense to our panelists to continue the conversation. On this regard, this week, as you know, is also Blockchain Ireland Week. It was a very interesting event about blockchain, of course, but more oriented towards businesses, financial institutions, with a very different view maybe from what you see during ETHDublin. The vision for this event is to actually build things for everyone on chains that are useful. So we're going to try to connect that with what you guys are working on and see how that is looking to solve or is starting to solve any problems in the real world. So please, if you would like to share about your project more specifically and how that connects to a real world problem.
Yeah, so I work in Consensys. I'm part of the customer success department, and we're creating products specifically for Web3 native customer success. So basically, let's say, for example, there's a lot of communities out there at the moment that have a lot of very specific needs when it comes to actually supporting those communities. There's a lot of developer relations as well. Like that's a strong community. There's a lot of developer relations communities inside of crypto, and so what we're trying to do is we're creating products that solve community-specific problems. And at the moment, there's a lot of communities using Web2 native products, for example, like Intercom or Zendesk, but they don't really fit with these crypto communities, these decentralized communities. And so we're trying to meet the communities where they are, whether they're inside of Discord or Telegram or different communities, different platforms, and then trying to put in Web3 native solutions for those. So integrations with block explorers and ways that members, ambassadors of those communities can be rewarded for their efforts in a decentralized manner as well. So that's the kind of real world problems that we're finding. There's a lot of communities that have a lot of decentralized communities that have ambassador programs, but they don't really have a way to engage those people or reward those people as well. So that's our observation and the thing that we're really leaning into at the moment. And I'm working with, this is on a project called VillageDAO, so feel free to reach out as well if you're interested in that.
Perfect. Thank you. Jacob?
Yeah, so I guess to give a little bit more background, I did mention that what I'm developing as a tokenized system for software licensing, but to break that down, since it's not the easiest thing to imagine, I'll give the story of how I got to that idea. So about 2020-ish, or beginning of 2020, I was planning on attending a student hackathon, and it was canceled due to the onset of the pandemic. And I was very upset about that. I wanted to make the project anyway, and I was figuring, well, how difficult can this be? It's just a project. How difficult is it just to put your work out there as a developer? And I learned it's a disaster. It's very difficult. Because the problem is like, well, yes, you can write the code, you can put it out there. You're not going to earn anything from it. People aren't going to see it. The best chance is you'll have like a public open source project that some people might see and might benefit from. But as the developer, you're kind of screwed. There's no guarantee that people will see it. There's no guarantee that you'll earn from it. And I thought that was an issue. So I started coming up with like thinking of ways that this could be solved. And I landed on the idea of what if we can sort of modernize the way we license our code? Because as most developers know who've ever interacted with something like a Git repository, your license is just a text file compared to the tech that we're developing, which is getting pretty advanced. That kind of seems a bit archaic. So the idea is directly tokenizing that license. Instead of it being a text file, we could issue that as an NFT, and you use that to token gate access to repositories. So instead of it just being this kind of archaic text file-based technology, like I said, now you have new ways to manage access to it. You can monetize your work, so you have the ability to put your work out there while being able to earn from it, see what's going on with it, have more visibility options.
Thank you. Kat?
So Aztec, yeah, it's a privacy first L2 on Ethereum. Our entire thing from day one was like, we want privacy to be easy for developers. That was it. So there's a lot of like privacy protocols and stuff out there, and there's languages, and if you guys are familiar with ZK, you'll know of like Circum and Socrates and those things. And they're quite difficult to use. You really feel like you're writing a ZK circuit, not that you're writing code. And Aztec's mission was to like make that easier. So they built Noir, which is a language for writing private circuits. And when you're writing it, it feels just like you're writing code. It is very similar to Rust, and it's like you don't have to think about really the privacy element of it. It's just like feels like private, feels like code. But we use that and then are now building the L2, the non-actual network, which will allow developers to write private smart contracts. But the really interesting thing about it is that it's like hybrid public and private state. So you can have private tokens that you like maybe want to make public for some certain reasons. You can have a private NFT that people don't know that you've betted on at some point, but you can like prove that you own it for something publicly, and then be like, okay, it's not mine anymore, it's private again. So there's a lot of like interesting things there, and we want to build it on specifically like on Ethereum, because we know that that's not going away anytime soon. The security of Ethereum is amazing, and it's going to be there forever. And it also lets us have like really easy communication with Ethereum, so you can do stuff on Ethereum privately. So yeah, I mean, we're just trying to make like privacy easier. If you're hacking in the hackathon, highly recommend checking out Noir. I'm actually going to be hacking and building on Noir with this guy. So we're going to be building something with that. But yeah, it makes privacy easy and accessible for everyone, which is our core motto.
Perfect. Thank you. Very important, privacy. All right. Now, can we touch an issue that I guess we all agree on, whether if you are new to the Web3 space or an OG, you might hear that the general conversation is around the UX UI, like the front end, the interface is very like difficult, hard to use. But I guess since we all know that already, or you might experience it yourself, let's try to focus on the solutions. So since we have different perspectives here today, Conor, why don't you go first and share what is similar to the Web2 side and how that can be fixed, or what are you doing from your end to have a better UX UI and user-friendly interface?
Yeah, definitely. So when I first started in working in Consensys, my assumption was that this is an entirely new industry. I know nothing about this. I just assumed that everybody knew how to use these things. I assumed everybody was like familiar with it, and I had to catch up. But the more and more I dived into different topics, the more and more I found that the previous experience I have of designing user experiences, all of the frameworks, they're entirely applicable inside of our industry. And I think that we're at this point now with layer 2s where applications are being built, where the motivation from the user's perspective is you can't just rely on their motivation to earn money, which is like a really strong kind of user motivation. Let's say you have a ticketing software or something along those lines. And the expectation from a user's perspective is that it's as easy to use as a Web2 native experience, right? And I think that there's some great competition happening at that level as well. Like at the network level, we're seeing some great competition to reduce solve that friction. Great competition happening at like the wallet level as well. But my experience, like from working in this industry for the last 2 years, and I've been working as a user experience designer for like 8 years before that, is that user experience, like virtually all of the frameworks inside of Web 2 are directly applicable, and we should be learning from those and leveraging those as well, right? So, for example, like how do we understand the value of what we're doing, or the problem that's being solved? So, like job to be done kind of frameworks as well, you know, as well as like lean user experience. But I know that that's sort of a long, like there's a lot of frameworks to use. Whenever I talk to developers, it can be a little bit like there's a lot of like potential things to learn in that area. So my main piece of advice there would be just simply to have an ongoing conversation with your users. I think they're the things that's extremely important. Also, like from a, you know, when there's even the applicability of user experience to like point systems and token systems as well. Like when I first started, I assumed that these things were entirely economic principles or economic concepts. But people have experiences of tokens. People have experiences of points. You know, we've seen with the launch of EigenLayer and how like that token and the negative expectation or the negative interpretation of that, that's all user experience at the end of the day. You know, like the euro that we interact with, that has a better user experience than the previous coin that we had before, right? The punt, you know. So yeah, even those things, and as well, I suppose one of the great things that we work in, one of the great things that we can take advantage of is all of our communities. You know, that doesn't really exist in Web 2 as much. You can, you know, go into a Discord, go into a Telegram, ask for feedback, and you might get contacted by a scammer, but like, you know, you'll probably get some feedback from people with those problems. So that's something that I think, like that direct community engagement and that continuous conversation with the community, I think is super important.
Perfect. Thank you. We'll skip here to Kat in this opportunity. Can you share more from the Aztec side, how you guys are making developers' life easier on the tech side, and also from the community since you're in DevRel?
Yeah, so I actually kind of want to address the original UX thing in the first place, because in my head, I don't know if I get when people say we need Web3 UX to be better, because I feel like Web2 UX is having 200 accounts to all these different platforms, having like 5 different ways to sign up for something, having to put in your bank account for like every single thing, sometimes Visa, sometimes it's MasterCard, sometimes you have to like do direct debits, and it's not easy, and it's like we have to match it in Web3, but the entire purpose of Web3 is that it brings real-life principles into the digital world. We have real-life ownership. We have one account, and that's for everything. It's like it's us on the digital world, and I feel like it is just an easier UX. So for me, it just feels like it's a weird, I don't know, when we're talking about bringing Web2 UX to Web3, I'm like, what do we want? Do we want all these different like siloed islands of Web2 where you're like a different person everywhere to bring in? Because that's what we're used to, but I don't want that on Web3. So I don't know if you want to like talk about that.
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic point, because like the experience of setting up a bank account is like painful, like it's incredibly painful. Whereas the experience of like spinning up a new wallet, like you just do it instantly, right? And even now, still we like complain about that. You know, we talk about like all the user experience problems of like seed phrases and that kind of thing. But having a high expectation, I think the reason that we have such a high expectation is because the sign-up process inside of like a lot of Web2 experiences is like extremely simple, right? But it does lead to this siloization, right? But like, if we can crack it, it will be like a significant boon, like unlock, right? Because you get interoperability. You know what I mean? You get the ability to port your social graph from one place to another place. You get the ability to build on top of all of these different incredible applications, right? And I don't think we're there yet, but if we can get to a point where we are there, I think it's definitely, that's kind of the experience of the network, right? That's the experience of like the blockchain itself, yeah.
Cool, okay. Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Can I actually add something?
Yes.
So,
Please, all yours.
might be a very unpopular take, but I actually think that the Web3 user experience should be almost identical to the Web2 user experience. And the reason I say this is when you think about Web2 in general, think about how many people there are in the world and how long it's taken to onboard all of them to Web2. I'm sure almost everyone knows someone who struggles to just use the internet to begin with, and now we're trying to introduce new concepts to that, things that people aren't going to understand. I'm sure most of us in this room, since we are very into Web3, we understand how you create a wallet, how you can sign transactions, but now imagine trying to onboard all the Web2 people who may not already understand what they're interacting with to understand this too. So my take on the user experience is I believe it should be a Web3 backend with a Web2 frontend, if that makes sense. We can still make use of all the Web3 technology, but it's just hidden out of sight. Where we could have, like, you've mentioned the idea of all these like social logins that we have, like some sites might have like 15 different options to log in. There's no reason why that can't be just hidden to a wallet in the background. Sure, you won't be controlling your own private keys, but for most users, I don't think that's something they really consider. Most people aren't already worried about who's controlling their data, where that's actually stored. I think we are kind of in a minority that we are worried about who's controlling my keys, who's controlling my data, and if we want to actually get the technology to grow, to get more people to use it, we might have to sacrifice a bit of decentralization in favor of just ease of access.
Why do we want more people to use it if we're just gonna like go back to Web 2 principles? What's the point in building any of this?
Well, I think the idea is that we can sort of have a balance of both. Web 2, we have it very user-friendly, but that's because we are relying on centralization. We have things in one place, it's fast, it's easy for people to understand, but that doesn't mean it's not compatible with Web 3. Like, we can totally have the interoperable Web 3 content. We could have the option for people who want it to be totally in control of your stuff. I just think it's the idea that you have choice. If you want to, you can be a Web 2 user on Web 3 tech. If you want to be totally, hey, I'm in control of all my stuff, I value my privacy, then sure, go ahead.
Okay, cool. Okay.
Interesting.
A choice. I like
Next
that.
time we're
That's
going
nice.
to add an interactive QR code. We would ask the audience what type of interface would you prefer. But yeah, thank you for sharing. Connor, want to add some last idea?
I
And
was just
we
going to
continue?
say, I find it really interesting because like the structures of these organizations define like the output of the experience, right? So like Facebook hires a ton of people who just like go down this, they just identify every like aspect in that user journey and they just kind of, but like they just get rid of each piece of friction that exists in those
To make it fucking addictive and
no.
make them a ton of money. This is not a good UX. This is not what we want.
Well,
We want choice.
So but the entire other end of that spectrum is a network that doesn't have any emphasis on user experience, doesn't invest anything in that. And potentially the reason that those things happen is because those networks don't get any value from that, right? So I think there's something very interesting in terms of that. I don't know how to put it, but like there's this tendency towards like centralization and sort of design pops in at some point along that experience. And I don't know why that is. Like, I don't know why we can't just have the decentralized thing that's actually just really easy to use.
I like the point you make about Facebook and their user experience because, like, yeah, all these Web2 companies, they are highly incentivized to create a good user experience. But at the same time, I think it would be foolish to think that they're not doing anything in the background with Web3. Like, as a lot of people know, Reddit, they are attaching wallets to your accounts, and most people don't know it because they want to have these collectible avatars with it. So I agree, Web2 companies do have very good user experience, and I also agree that Web3 gives a lot more, taking away from the whole capitalizing your attention, being able to advertise more effectively, and just being able to, you want to take your data. But yeah, I think Web2 user experience, combine that with whatever's going on in Web3, like we can have all these big existing companies that are running the user experiences. I think if anything, to create the best user experience, we have to collaborate with them because Google, Facebook, Apple, they're not going to go away just because blockchain-based technology turns up. They're going to try to adapt to it.
Yeah, that's true. I like your example with Reddit as well. I think it's a really good one. Like, there's actually
Interesting.
collectibles into this company that already has a Web 2 interface. So, yeah, cool.
Great to see different perspectives. You know, this is what panels are for. You know, like really putting out there different views and probably finding a middle ground or just paying attention, listening actively to what others are building and how they view the world. So thank you for that. Kat, you want to go back to the
DevX?
Yeah, like
Yeah.
how are
Back
you
to
guys
that.
making
Well, that's
life
what developers are
easier?
people that we care about. So, we've just like abstracted a ton of there's so many things in privacy that you probably know the words of if you're interested in it. Like there's zero knowledge proofs. There's fully homomorphic encryption and all of this stuff. And Aztec uses all of this on the back end, and you do not have to think about this at all. And it's actually been a really interesting topic because we kind of want people to be aware of how they're using these privacy principles, because we don't want people to accidentally write an application that leaks privacy. So we're trying to find this middle ground of like how abstracted can we get this while also still being secure. But I mean, I think for me, like I've been writing circuits for a while. I was like using Socrates back in the day, and it was terrible, and it was like so hard to use, but it's like my first love. But Noir feels just so much easier to use, and we have like this community of only developers. It's like very exclusive. We don't have our Discord up everywhere like a lot of like Consensys, but like we only invite specific developers in, and we really listen to what they say, and we have a lot of like contributors, and it's all open source, and yeah, it's
how does
really
a developer
awesome.
get to participate if they would like to get involved
Yeah.
with Aztec?
So unfortunately, we're not sponsoring this hackathon. I tried to get them to, but we didn't. We're just like in a weird timeline right now. But we will be at a bunch of other events like throughout the year if you want to make some money and build on Noir. But yeah, if you want anything to do with privacy in your application, if it's to do like if you want to build something with Tornado Cache or something, you can very much easier do that with Noir than with Circum. So I'll be around. Come up to me and like I can help you. We have some pretty good docs. We actually just like redid them all. So we got some good examples as well. Like we have a TC example and some other like private voting stuff that you can have a look at. So
Thank you. Great. Jacob, can we touch base on also the developer side? In that part where you share that you're helping developers tokenize like their work and putting it out there and be able, to earn a good living through having more ownership around what they build. Can you share a bit on that, please? Like in simple terms, because we generally listen to that regarding content creators, but how does it work in the case for developers?
Yeah, so I guess thinking about it from a developer standpoint, with the way it currently exists can be thought of in two ways. You have open source developers and you have developers who work in closed source proprietary environments. The ones who work with closed source code, proprietary code, those are the ones that get rich because you're working for a company that wants to protect its IP and they'll pay you well. But open source developers, I've often heard open source devs say that they kind of feel like it's charity work. They're putting it out there with no real idea of getting anything in return for it. So I guess I've kind of come to the idea of the licensing system that I have and the sort of access management with it. And one of the ideas is something of hybrid source. So if we're going to be tokenizing access to repositories, we have this tokenized single entry point that gives access to the licensed code. And there's no reason that you can't have multiple different versions of that. So you can issue a version of the code where this is the fully open source version. You can have that be a free mint for everyone. But the idea is that you can specify which individual files or directories that people want access to. So if you want to have people pay for access to a license, they could have the proprietary version of it. So kind of the idea is giving more options that developers ordinarily wouldn't have to monetize their work to earn from it, as well as just being aware that they have it protected. Because again, the benefit of having this single tokenized entry point is if someone's going to misuse your code, you know who your token holders are. You'll have a record of when it happened just based off of what the current state is because of Git version control. You can look back and see when it was that way. And you'll have like this window of when someone may have done something. So it tracks misuse, helps people earn from it. And just in general, I think it's cool because it's bringing Web3 tech into a Web2 environment, which normally isn't what goes on. A lot of Web3 tech is focused on Web3.
Interesting. Right, thank you. All right, yesterday we were like jamming around this panel. What ideas should we touch? What should we talk about? Kate came up with an interesting publication that was shared by Vitalik Buterin like three or 4 days ago, which talked about layer 2s and the subcultures that are created around each one of them. This wasn't in the brief, but can one of you share briefly like what is that paper talking about, and then we can go deep how your project is kind of part of a certain subculture. Anyone want to take like what is layer 2? What does it mean to have that subculture?
I mean, I'm a layer 2. Well, Aztec is a layer 2, so maybe I can take this. I don't think Aztec is actually part of this, but Vitalik, yeah, he recently posted a blog post of how, like, there are, I think, 700 and something, like, roll-ups. They're either optimistic or ZK roll-ups, and they all, like, they don't really add any technical stuff. They just add scalability to Ethereum, and there are so many of them, and, like, what you can achieve on them is the same across all of them, but what is achieved on them is different, and that's what Vitalik was talking about, was that, like, these chains are trying to build subcultures, and it's good to know, like, which chain is kind of interested in which type of culture and what kind of apps and developers that they're bringing. So an example I think I used in our Telegram chat was Base. Like, they had, they're just an OP stack. Like, it's the same as all the optimism chains. But they had Frentech, and so their whole thing was really focused on, like, social and reputation and, like, social NFTs and things like that. And I actually think a lot of the RFC chips are for minting things on Base, just FYI if you find them, so that's kind of interesting. So if you're wanting to build like okay, it's just one, never mind. That's the one I got. So if you're wanting to, like, build like a social app, you know, you'd probably go to Base. That's where you're gonna find that kind of person. But even though you can deploy it on all of them and they'd all just work the same way, like, yeah, the subcultures are the interesting part.
I'm gonna read a piece of that. It says, "This is where I get to what is perhaps the single most underappreciated property of layer 2s. For a subculture, a layer 2 is the ultimate playing field for action. Layer 2s allow subcultures to emerge that are armed with substantial resources and a feedback loop that forces them to learn and adapt in order to be effective in the real world." Again, real world problems, right? So each ecosystem, you are also sharing this, Kat, attracts different layers of the like people from the protocol layer, then the application layer, then the people, the users, right, the end user. Your project around those lines, what is the subculture around what you're building, Jacob? And same for you, maybe from the part of Village DAO that you can share more. Yeah, let's go deep into the subculture.
I don't think this is something I'm the right person to ask, because generally I don't really follow subcultures. I mean, my whole thing is just following what the technical appeal of something is and how you pull it off that way. Like, when we're talking about, like, the subculture ideas, like sort of the social environment around the layer 2s and all this, right? Like, I mean, if I'm being honest, I'm just the autistic 21-year-old who spends all my time in my bedroom writing code, so I don't
That's a
interact
subculture.
with people that much.
we're all one of those.
All right, awesome.
Yeah.
Conor?
So recently we're trying to create a product, and it has a smart contract aspect to it as well. There's an NFT that ambassadors receive, and they can access and give support to community members as part of Village DAO, and they earn rewards off the back of that. So we're one of the challenges of what we're facing at the moment is we decided to launch on Polygon, and we've discovered that there's quite a lot of network and layer 2 competition right now, and so we were doing a lot of business development, and we found a lot of engagement with other networks. But because we had launched our application on we had selected one network, we discovered that this was something of deal breaker for engaging with other networks, right? And so that's just something, you know, if you're hacking and you're trying to sell a product into different communities, the selection of that subculture, or selecting of that layer 2 is it needs to fit with with those people that you're trying to sell to. It kind of creates these, like, at least from our perspective, very recently, it's created these kind of barriers at this point, because there's such a lot of the activity, a lot of the competition is happening at that network layer. Now, that's not to say that will continue to happen. You know, there might be ways for those barriers to be broken down, and maybe like stacks that focus more on the application layer. But that's something of a realization for us very recently.
Thank you. Now let's focus a little bit more on the future side of things. So as we start wrapping up the panel, can you share one take from your perspective for the next year for Ethereum? That's the first question. And then since we're here in Dublin, Ireland, we would like to honor the community, the local community, and ask if there's something that you could contribute to the local community here so it can grow, continue building on Ethereum, what would it be? And what would you like to learn from the local community as well?
Yeah. The first question was hot take for the future. I am consistently terrible at like predicting the future. Like every timeline thing that happened over the last like 12 months, I was surprised at, but also seemed inevitable in retrospect. So my hot take is I'll just continue to be surprised. Do we want to do hot takes first?
It's a good one.
Yeah.
All right, Jacob?
I'm not really sure. I don't really have many hot takes when it comes to this. I guess maybe only hot take is hopefully Ordinal's hype around that kind of dies off, because I find them a bit stupid. I think it's no appeal in that.
All right, Kat?
Yeah, I mean, I think I exhausted all my hot takes earlier, but yeah, I mean, I think we'll probably realize that when we're building Ethereum, we're kind of building this next dystopia. If we don't have privacy in it, like we're just building the tools for the next surveillance state, right? Like what was the point? So, I mean, I think Ethereum is amazing and transparency is good, but having some privacy in it is probably needed. I don't know if that's a hot take because Vitalik's talking about it, so yeah.
And on the community side for Ireland and likewise back?
The meetups are super important. Like I always get so much out of a meetup, and I just want to thank everybody involved for running this meetup. I go to the Blockchain Ireland meetups as well, and they're a great way to meet other people in this industry and related industries. And another thing that is pretty interesting is like we've got elections coming up as well. So if I'm talking to an Irish audience, like maybe try to contact. I'm trying to do it as well at the moment. Is trying to contact the candidates and see what their policies are around crypto. A lot of people new to the space or don't know it just hear about like the FTX blow up or like the volatility or whatever. So actually promoting the things that we're building and educating and asking those candidates, I think will help us a lot over the next few years.
Most definitely, most definitely. Jacob?
So I guess as far as the community goes, there's not too much to say as I haven't interacted very much with the Irish community. This is only my second time ever in Ireland. So I guess I appreciate being able to come here for this event. This community is the reason I'm here now. Yeah. But I guess what I can kind of say in a community regard is Web3 community is a great thing. It's what gets you to get to events like this. Like I'm here because of people like Neve and Frank and Owen, who I see at events all around Europe all the time. So it's a really good thing to engage with your local communities in Web3, whatever that be, just see where it takes you.
Amazing, beautiful. And Kat?
I think Ireland has always been on the right side of history, so I think this is my first, I'm from up north, but I don't live there anymore, I live in Portugal for tax. But this is my first like Irish crypto conference, and there's so many people. The fact that this room is almost full is insane. Like that doesn't happen in especially on a panel. People normally don't care about the panels, so it's like really cool to see this. And everyone I've spoken to has been enthusiastic and has had some idea, and it's really really cool to see. So I'm bullish on Ireland.
Ooh, that's great. That's great. Yeah, I'll add quickly to that. I'm from Chile. I live in Italy since 3 years, and this is my first time in Dublin. I came specifically for the conference. So as you can see, yeah, great participation. Super happy to be here with you all. All right, and one last piece of advice for the hackers this weekend. From what you learned, your experience, from you, Jacob, you started at 15 years old, as you shared, and Conor, from your knowledge, one piece of advice for the brave hackers this weekend.
Mine was easy. It's just talk to users. Find your user, talk to them all the time.
Thank you. Jacob?
I guess I would say try something new. A lot of times at hackathons, you see people repeating the same ideas, trying to sort of copy and paste what's already out there. But if you want to actually learn more from it and try something unique, try to do something someone hasn't done before.
Thank you, Kat.
Whatever you think you can build this weekend, cut it into like 20%. That's what you can actually do. Stick to that scope, but that's going to work.
Baby step. Amazing. Well, thank you so much for this great panel. Just a small message. I will be doing onboarding to anyone who doesn't have a Web3 wallet, who wants to learn anything about crypto. So just feel free to reach out to me during the event if you have anyone that wants to learn. So yeah, just a small message before we wrap up. Thank you so much for this beautiful panelist. Thank you for the audience. Yeah, amazing.
I mean, I think that's